There was a sense of we have to do something to make all of this worthwhile. You know, we've pushed the envelope to the outer limits now. And what do we do? Try and escape or tell the story, go live? So we went live and, you know, 6 hours later, Marie was dead and I was blown up.
In war zones, parents go to bed at night not knowing if their children will see the morning. That is a measure of fear that I can never feel. But when you're covering a war, you have to go to places where you could be killed or where others are being killed. And put one foot in front of the other, no matter how afraid you are, to make that suffering part of the record.
Is it safe? Is it safe to walk through?
Only this way out, only this side.
This is the only way.
This one.
Okay. Stay down. I'm not armed! Journalist! Come here!
To start with, I just cared about this extraordinary woman. I wanted to put this person on screen who, you know, seemed so vivid to me in all her complexity. You know, that here was someone so fiercely strong and yet vulnerable and had such humanity and yet sort of was quite blind to her own needs. Often lived with such optimism and romanticism, even though she went to some of the darkest places on earth. I just thought she was extraordinary. And I thought, God, if there was there is a documentary called Bearing Witness that follows Marie and 4 other female correspondents, but I wish there'd been a documentary just about Marie.
Marie was such a, not many people are that devoted to the truth. You know, Marie would look at a story and keep going. She was tenacious, and she wanted to tell the story of the effects of war, but on the people who really suffered most from it, which is women and children. They're the ones who always end up hunkered down in some basement somewhere, starving, unable to feed babies. So she was so focused on that. And she died telling that story.
I'm most happy with the vodka martini in my hand, but I can't stand the fact that the chatter in my head won't go quiet until there's a quart of vodka inside me. I hate being in a war zone. But I also feel compelled to see it for myself.
So this film covers both, you know, Marie and her efforts to tell the story of the people with no voice.
We actually had, in every war zone that we covered in the film, Matt had interviewed and met, you know, people from those countries currently living in Jordan. But I think Syria was particularly emotional, poignant, relevant because you know, the Syrian conflict continues, and you know, the tragedy of the siege of Homs is still very recent memory. So anybody who was currently living in Jordan who'd come from Homs, you know, their memories are raw, and that rawness is in our film now because we, you know, Matt asked them if they would be happy to recount some of their own experiences, and so he would release Jamie and I into a room, you know, perhaps in the room. Marie wrote an article which she termed about the widow's basement, she called it, where women and children sheltered in the one basement in Baba Amma, and Matt had found, I don't know, 90% of the room that he filled with, the women and children who he filled a room with had come from Homs, and we just went in there and talked to them, and out came their true stories of, you know, husbands going missing, children trapped under the rubble, you know, but told with such delicacy, and it was a gift, actually, to be exposed to the sort of, I don't know, the dignity, the humanity, and also incredibly painful.
Marie, when bad happens, your brain goes into shock. It locks the trauma in the same place you process emotions, which isn't where memories are meant to live. That's why it feels so present.
Is that why you left the army?
No, I was court-martialed. Planted some hashish in my locker to get out.
How long did it take you to get better?
A long bloody time. Marie, you've seen more war than most soldiers. You have to take it seriously.
Jamie is just such a great character, just a great guy. And I didn't want to approach it as teaching him. You know what I mean? He's already a photographer, and so he knows how to handle a camera. You know, that was great. It was just, you know, certain scenes where there were crowds and he had to get pictures and people were getting in his way. You know, I said at one point, I said, look, you know, you're there for one reason, to get the shot, so don't be afraid to go in and get a bit physical and move people. Just tips like that, really, to make it. And, you know, we did spend a few nights in bars kind of doing tutorials, like you take what you need from us, from this, which was great. It was so easy going with Ros and Jamie that, you know, an absolute pleasure to work with them.
I have the living, breathing embodiment of who I'm playing with us for the entirety of the shoot. So, you know, where between takes, you know, Ros would be on her phone and listening to, you know, audio of Marie, or watching, you know, clips of Marie, and just trying to keep the embodiment of her. My job was made so much easier by being able to go and talk to the real person, and on so many levels that was beneficial, obviously, you know. But even just to have him there for the very sort of finite moments that we're depicting in the movie, to say what was actually going through your head. I mean, that's when I might probably never get that again in a job, to be able to have access to that. So for me, it was incredible to have him there. And I mean, Ros, you should be here. You'll be here the rest of the day if she tells you the research that she did.
So let's not do that.
What's your name?
Paul.
I'm Marie.
I know.
So you're freelance?
Always.
Any good?
The best.
Come on.
What now?
I need a photographer. I've never found one I like. Let's see how you do.
Now?
Yeah.
Initially, when I met Ros, you know, physically there's no resemblance between Rosamund and Marie. But I met her, and then 6 months later I saw her in Jordan walk out of this trailer on set. And I was just bowled over by the physical resemblance, you know, but also the way she held herself, the way she used the pen, the way she walked, the way she drank her coffee, smoked the cigarette. It was Marie down to a T. But when I had to do dialogue, that was just like, wow, you know, it kind of freaked me out a bit. The hairs on the back of my hand came up. I was really, she put so much into that, so much, and it paid off, you know. What you see on screen, it's phenomenal.
David Blundy.
Who?
David Blundy.
What about him?
Left for the Telegraph before you joined. I took his job.
What is your point?
And he was killed 2 years later in San Salvador. Jao Silva. Lost both legs at the knee in Kandahar while working for the New York Times. I was with him in Afghanistan. Safa Abu Saif.
Who did he work for?
She was a 12-year-old Palestinian girl, killed by a stray bullet that pierced her heart. I watched her parents hold her as she bled out. She was wearing pearl earrings. She probably thought she looked pretty that day. I see it, so you don't have to.
What a worrying thing that happens is people become a bit desensitized to particular conflict zones if they're ongoing. You know, people just sort of lose interest, you know, and it's definitely, you know, made me try to be a little bit more knowledgeable and open to the idea that there's still massive things that need to be done to stop. I mean, it's a step in the right direction today with the result of the court case. You know that this can't continue. You know, Assad's regime is still responsible for thousands of civilian deaths, and if our movie can shine a bit of light on that, it's a good thing, because people do become sort of tired of hearing about it.
The buildings were crumbling around us. A lot of the people who'd taken us in were dead. You know, they kept coming in going, so-and-so is dead and so-and-so. And it's like your world keeps getting smaller. We couldn't get out the door because of the shelling. And the building was getting hit, and it was just closing in on us. And that's kind of why we decided to do these broadcasts on CNN, BBC, Channel 4, because we realised we weren't going to get through to file our story on Friday. So there was a sense of we have to do something to make all of this worthwhile. You know, we've pushed the envelope to the outer limits now. And what do we do, try and escape or tell the story, go live? So we went live, and, you know, 6 hours later, Marie was dead and I was blown up.
There's an assault coming, we need to go now. Now! Quick,
Stop.
What are you doing?
I gotta go back. There are 28,000 people there.
No.
We can't
Listen to
abandon
me!
them.
You're brilliant and brave, and you've got an amazing nose for the story, but you don't have a military brain, all right? Here,
Let me go.
Hey, we will freaking die if we go back. Okay? We will
I gotta
freaking
go back.
die.
You go.
No.
Save me a seat at the bar.
No, which bar? Where? Marie! No. Come on, come here.
Jamie was really good, actually. When it came to filming the final scene, I'd become the unit photographer. I was taking stills on set, and I'd filmed the actual explosions that killed Marie and got me. But when it came to the final scene where you see Marie, Remy dead in the rubble, and Jamie kind of crawling towards it, Jamie actually took me aside before they filmed that and took me into another room and said, "You really don't need to see this at this point in time." So I only ever saw that final scene when I sat down and watched the film. And yeah, I mean, that was incredibly powerful, an emotional moment. And I'm glad he did that. I'm glad he took me away, because I think I'd pushed it to that point. I can handle this. But that last scene was really, they were ripping the body armor up and putting fake blood on and everything. And it was like, don't need that.
Maybe I would have liked a more normal life. Maybe I just don't know how.